Does TCU have a problem at running back behind Amani Bailey? Also, we'll talk about our feelings after the Nicholls State game. We'll look ahead to Houston. Is it Shad Banks time for the defense, specifically this linebacker core? All that and more coming up next on Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm Steven Simcox. Next to me is Matt Jennings. We're talking TCU football. They're getting ready to play Houston, coming off on a win against Nicholls State. And Matt, I talked about this earlier this week. I initially, after that game Saturday, I wasn't super thrilled. They won 41-6. It didn't feel like they won by that margin. After kind of thinking about it more and rewatching it, I felt better. You know, they had some injuries, some things going on. But I want to know from you, after that football game, do you feel good, bad, or meh about this football team right now?
You know, I'm like the little girl in the commercial for the taco shells. I'm like, why not both, right? I think on defense, I feel better just because, and I said this on Saturday, the level of competition is what it is, but there was a higher level of intensity and effort and discipline. Overall, the tackling was better. We harped on the tackling a lot coming out of the Colorado game. It was cleaner in general for most everybody on Saturday. And they did, Joe Gillespie, to his credit, and I know we're going to talk about this, made some small, but made some personnel adjustments. We saw a lot more Shad Banks on Saturday, which was something that we had talked about, right? So feeling better-ish about the defense. It was because as much as the offense struggled, the game was never felt like in doubt or worrisome because the defense, had them completely in check the entire time, right? So that side of it feel good. Offensively, I came out of it feeling like worse somehow, just because you end up having to go for it on third down. Go for it on fourth down, it was 4 times and you converted twice. You were 4 of 12 on third down. Like there were just so many instances where it's like you felt like you had to go for it on fourth down in multiple instances because it's like, well, we should have gotten it on third down, or we shouldn't have even been in third down, right? Like it's like you were they call it a get right game for a reason, right? Like you're supposed to like get the offense humming and feel good about yourself because of the way you're executing, and you had even more difficulty and more snafus, right? And so like that's the thing that worries me. Now to your point, like there were some injuries going on and there were some things I think to like, but the needing to go for it on fourth down and the not setting yourself up well on early downs and the not being able to control the line of scrimmage in the run game, even less so than you did against Colorado, like those are things that are concerning to me. So it's both.
Okay, thank you for hedging. I appreciate that. I would say I feel good, but there's some caveats. I mean, you're right. Offense did not look great. They could not run the ball in Nicholls State, which is not a fantastic sentence to come out of my mouth. Chandler Morris really on some like breakdown, scramble type things was the only person that had significant success in the run game. I think they were handicapped by some of those injuries at wide receiver. And ultimately, I feel like they just sort of took an approach of, okay, let's tinker with some things. Let's play pretty vanilla and get out of here alive, which, I said earlier this week, that's not my favorite approach to this game since you lost the previous week, but I understand the thought process for the coaching staff. Okay, so this will be good because I think we disagree here. And so I want to hear your thoughts on the offensive line. We talked about their struggles Saturday running the football. What are your main concerns about this O-line as we get into conference play now?
Yeah, you shouldn't average 3.5 yards a carry against Nicholls. It just shouldn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that they, again, like this is what ostensibly, if you're going to run the if you're going to run Kendal Briles' system, the benefit of that is supposed to be like, it became a meme in the early years at Arkansas that he was there, right? Like, oh, they're womping, right? Like they talk about that on the full cast all the time. Like they would run over people. They'd run for 400 yards in a game. They can't establish that because they can't create lanes for Amani Bailey and Trey Sanders. And you have like, these are two of the lighter defensive fronts you're going to face all season in Colorado and Nicholls. So that is concerning. If you can't establish yourself and control and move bodies consistently in these two games, and you're going to start getting into games against Texas and against some, as you get into the thick of the Big 12 schedule, that's really worrisome to me. I think Chandler in the passing game, they made do with what they had at receiver. Chandler Morris, I think, padded his stats a little bit in the second half, but I think overall looked totally fine. He's healthy through 2 games. He's been really efficient. He has been able to run the ball pretty well, especially against Nicholls. There's some things to like for sure. But if the centerpiece of this offense is to be able to run the ball between the tackles and hit explosive plays in the run game, they're not doing that. They've had like a couple explosive runs in each of these games, right? But like they are not consistently getting chunk yardage, consistently putting themselves in second and short, consistently. Again, the fact that you're ending up in 3rd and 8 on a fairly regular basis, the fact that you're having to go for it on 4th down around midfield because you haven't had success on early downs running the ball. And we can have a whole discussion about the play selection too, which is its own other thing. So I'm concerned is the short version.
Here's why I'm not super concerned. Now, not running the football against Nicholls State, I don't have a great explanation or comeback for that. Okay, it was what it was. I think they were consistently bringing 7 or 8 guys. It seemed like they made an effort to just say, we're not going to let you just run the ball on us. We're going to try to confuse the offensive line, come from different angles. I feel good about the interior. Weirdly, my reason for optimism is I think the tackles are struggling the most at this point, and namely it's Andrew Coger, which he flipped sides. I believe he's moved from right tackle to left tackle, and there's been a lot of discussion about this amongst TCU fans. That is a change. It's a change with your footwork. It's a change with your reads, how you see the defense up at the second level. I feel like ultimately, though, it's something that he can get used to. And, I like what they've gotten out of John Lands at center and then Willis Patrick at guard and Coleman at the other guard, which is what I was most concerned about going into the year. I feel like they've been solid in pass pro. And we'll see. If they're not effective running the football against Houston, then I will – and Houston's got a good defense. But then I'll have bigger concerns. But right now I'm still willing to say I feel like these 5 guys kind of gel together as the year goes on and get better. But speaking of the running game, one of the things that I talked a lot about this offseason that I feel kind of silly about at the moment is I really thought Trey Sanders was going to be a huge factor in this offense. I think he still can be, but he hasn't been so far. Trent Battle and Corey Wren are both guys that it just feels like they're athletes, but they're not really running backs, and so they don't ever fully know how to use them properly. And then Cam Cook's been injured. So there's not a ton of depth here, at least on paper. What do you kind of make of their rotation or lack thereof at the moment at that position?
Yeah, I think you're right on Trey Sanders. There's a reason why, as a former 5-star recruit, he wasn't able to get on the field at Alabama, was because he was hurt a lot, had some injury issues, some football related, some not, right? And that's not his fault. But I think through the first couple games, if you're averaging 3 yards a carry against Colorado and against Nicholls, I I don't have a ton of optimism that they're going to be. Now, some of that's situational, right? They're using him as a short yardage back, so they're asking him to get 2 yards on 3rd and 1. Okay, then that's a successful play, right? So, like, take that into account. But, like, there's a difference in explosiveness. There's a difference in terms of, again, he's not someone who's giving you chunk yardage. The hurdle on Saturday was cool. Let me say
it
that.
was, yeah. Like,
nice. Let's be super honest. He's a great athlete. Let's be clear about that. In terms of like what you can do, I do think, I like Trent Battle, to your point, like just a really good athlete. I think a guy that, maybe just get him on the field a little bit more and try some stuff, just like when he's gotten the opportunity to get on the field and make plays, whether that's on offense, whether that's on special teams, he generally does it. So I'd be curious to like get him some more snaps and see what happens. He had a nice run for a first down against Colorado. He had a key because he was the guy who recovered the muffed punt against K-State in the Big 12 title game as well. Like he's around the ball. This is a very loose measure for me, is like guys who are just around the ball a lot, right? So I like that about him. One interesting thing might be you've used Major Everhart a little bit at receiver and you've used him a little bit at returner. Do you put him in there as a change of pace guy out of the backfield and let him try and run, or let him like get him on some pitch plays and get him on the perimeter and like kind of stitch together a running game that way? You gotta that, and that also kind of eliminates or reduces the burden on the offensive line too, if you're getting out on the edge and trying to get some yards on the ground that way. So that would be something I'd consider doing with him and with Jordan Bailey as well, Amani's brother. So those are like some options that I think they could kick around a little bit. But I don't think this offense is meant to have like one bell cow. I think you're supposed to be able to have this rotation of guys, and the fact that they don't is a little concerning. Now, we don't know anything about Cam Cook's injury status. I like him a lot as a prospect. If he gets healthy, I think he gets a lot of snaps and has an opportunity really fast. But yeah, I think they're going to have to try and stitch something together with what they have. I like what I've seen from Amani Bailey when he gets a decent lane. I think he's explosive, and I think he can do some good things.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, Trey has a role, like he's found the end zone a few times. He's been a good situational back. And he could get more explosive as the year goes on, maybe if he gets more opportunities. I am also team Trent Battle. He had a blocked punt against Nicholls State in that game Saturday. And he just – good things happen when he gets the football. I don't know. Like, they've used him as a receiver. I'd like to see him getting downhill more or on the edge. I just feel like there has to be a way to get that guy the ball, because it seems like he's moving the chains when he does get the football in his hands. When we come back, we'll talk about Kendal Briles' play sheet. And, yeah, we'll just kind of see where we are a couple games in with the TCU offensive coordinator. I do want to tell you, though, listen, talent acquisition is the name of the game in any business, in any situation. And also, if you're putting together a team, you have to make sure the parts fit right. That's a huge part of recruiting in college football. And so if you're somebody who just doesn't really understand cars and vehicles, and you're confused when something goes wrong with your vehicle, use eBay Motors to make it easy for you. They have over 122 million parts on their website, and they have a cool feature called My Garage. So you can type in the make and model of your car. It'll set it up to where if you choose a part, it'll let you know if it's compatible or not. So you don't have to waste time wondering, okay, is this going to be the right part? Do I need to save the receipt? I'm going to have to repackage this. eBay Motors makes it easy for you. All the parts you need, all the prices you want. It's easy to turn your car into the MVP when you bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebay.com/motors. That's a new website, ebay.com/motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Make eBay Motors your place to go when you need parts for your vehicle. All right, back here on Locked On Horned Frogs. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit. The situational play calling at times has left some things to be desired. But what do you make of this offense so far under Kendal Briles as a play caller, Matt?
Yeah, I think I am confused because of what we were sold versus what we're seeing thus far. I think you make a good point. The opponents to this, through 2 weeks might be dictating things a little bit, because we were sold this is an offense that's going to run the ball. That's going to run the ball between the tackles a lot. That's going to involve the quarterback in the run game. That wants to be explosive on the ground. Okay, awesome. But the other thing that we know about the offense is it's like so RPO heavy. And I was just reading about Art's offense back in the heyday at Baylor in Chris B. Brown's book, The Art of Smart Football. And one thing that coaches say in that book is just like every pass is a run and every run is a pass, right? Like it's all built like it truly is like it's a read basically on every play. And obviously there's been variations on it since then. So I don't pretend to know enough to be able to tell. It could just be a matter of like both defenses that they faced have, to your point, just sold out and been like, we're going to give them the read that says the quarterback, you got to pull it and you got to throw on basically every down, right? Or not every down, but in situations where that might not be your preference as an offense. And we're going to just take our chances with that. That might be what the defenses are doing, which is, that's their prerogative. But if that's truly if you're going to live and die by that, that's fine. But then you got to be efficient throwing the ball. And it's clear that Chandler and this group of receivers just don't have that rhythm and that chemistry yet to make that work. So do you adjust your play calling a little bit and say like, hey, look, like we're going to just based on down and distance or based on what we feel like is working well, like we're going to take our foot off the RPOs just for a minute and just like try and establish a rhythm in the running game. Because I think that's what's frustrating people. It's what has frustrated me is the idea that like you're allowed to call multiple run plays in succession if it's working, right? The idea of like, oh, you just reeled off a 22-yard run, then you go and then you throw a fade to whoever it is, whoever the receiver is on whatever group of receivers that has yet to kind of really distinguish itself yet, right? So I think that's the thing is you don't have to be married to it. I think that's the important thing about offensive play calling is you have to have some degree of flexibility to put your players in the best position based on the personnel that you have, not based on like what your philosophy just is regardless.
Yeah, I mean, so there were head scratchers in that first game, but overall I was happy with what they did. The Nicholls State game was we kind of talked about it. It just seemed very, very disjointed. I think my concerns are twofold. One of them I feel like can get figured out, and I hesitate to say this because we're only 2 games into the season, but I don't know what the identity of this offense is other than they go fast. That seems to be about the only thing that they do consistently is they're just going to go at this pace, which, I mean, that's fine if you're moving the chains. If you're not, then it becomes problematic. And I feel like that's one of the things that he got away from at Arkansas because of Sam Pittman and because of what Sam Pittman wants to do. And now they kind of want to push the pedal to the metal. And, I mean, coach has talked about it this offseason. A.J. Ricker said, like, the tempo is the key. Sonny Dykes mentioned as well. But if you're not going to be efficient, then it can really hang your defense out to dry at times. And so that is to get figured out. The short yardage stuff, I don't know what's going on there. I mean, there's just been – I'm hoping that the lateral passing plays, those little like delayed screens to one side or the other, were just like, hey, let's see if this works. And, oh, no, they don't. Let's put that in our back pocket for now. But I obviously thought those were strange. And then the last thing I'll say about this, and overall I'm happy with the offense, but Sonny Dykes is going to have to take control of this aspect of it. This is a consistent theme with people on the Briles tree. They do not care about penalties. They do not care about details all the time because they always think they can get 20 to 25 yards whenever they want. And so typically these offenses are undisciplined, and there's pre-snap penalties and there's holding calls, and it just doesn't seem like it's a big point of emphasis. And there's been sloppy play the first few weeks of the season. And so they're going to have to find out as a team and as coaching staff how to mitigate that, because if you can't push the ball down the field, then you can't live in 2nd and 15 and 3rd and 13. Like it's just not a way to go. And that's the other thing I don't know yet, Matt. And hopefully, I guess we'll see more of it Saturday. I would assume. Like somebody mentioned it to me on Twitter. They got to throw the ball down the field at some point, right? Like you would think that has to be. I know Chandler's not known for that, but I mean, this is not like a 7th grade quarterback that is a running back by trade and can't throw the football. Like this is a D1 athlete who should be able to push the ball down the field. And
that is, I think, to be charitable, that you would say like, well, they haven't had the group of receivers they want out there, right? Whether it's Dalen Wright was banged up and didn't play on Saturday. Savion Williams has been banged up and hasn't played. Supposedly, he's closer to ready to go. Sonny Dykes said on Tuesday that Savion, Dalen Wright, and JP Richardson were all back at practice on Tuesday, and you would think that that puts him in a good spot for playing on Saturday when they all either didn't play or had really minor roles on Saturday against Nicholls, right? And so maybe that alleviates a little bit. I think Dalen Wright, Jalen Robinson, and Warren Thompson are kind of your 3 main guys in terms of if you're going to try and attack vertically. Those are your guys. Again, keep talking about Cordell Russell. That's kind of all his tape in high school is. It's either screens or it's fades, which you got to diversify the route tree at some point. But this is an offense that you can live in that space for a long time and just kind of make good on good athleticism, right? And so I'd be and he did make it onto the field on Saturday and then promptly got called for a penalty, right? So some learning lessons for the freshman, but I agree. I think that's also part of what is limiting the running game is, again, this offense is about spacing. It's about spacing vertically and spacing horizontally. You put those wide receivers all the way out to the boundary and past the numbers so you get light boxes, and you force defensive backs to not be able to play up because they have to play over the top to defend that vertical passing game. Or if they choose to creep up, or if they choose to encroach more toward the middle of the field, then you've got one-on-one matchups and you can go, right? We've not seen them really try to do that yet, with a couple exceptions, and so maybe that's a matter of like them just still finding the rhythm in the passing game, and once they feel more comfortable with it, or they face defenses they feel like they've got a better matchup, then they go with that. But I am, again, the supposed benefits of this offense, and there are many of them. That's part of the reason. I think part of the reason, among others, that Sonny brought in Kendal was because he saw what Tennessee was doing with Josh Heupel, which is running a variation of this offense, and how explosive. Like they were like the one of very few offenses last season that was more explosive than TCU's, right? Yeah. And I think he saw that and was enticed would be the wrong word, but like excited by it and said like, hey, I want to take some of those elements and bring them here, which is fine. We're not seeing those elements yet. And some of that's limits by personnel. Some of that is, I think, is early season sloppiness and jitters, to your point. But if you don't have those things that make that offense dangerous, well, it reminds me to some degree of like the late Gary Patterson years where it's like you have air raid coordinators, but you're not really running an air raid. If you take away the defining characteristics of the offense that make it effective, well, then you're just running a scheme for the sake of it that doesn't actually bring anything to the table. So I would ask them like, hey, if you're going to run it, run it. If you're going to run this offense the way it's going to be run, you got to do that vertical passing attack. You got to commit to the run game. You got to get the spacing that you want. We haven't seen that through 2 games. It's only 2 games though. I will say this, like I bang on the offense a lot. There are very few teams in the country through 2 weeks of this college football season that are happy with the way things are looking for their team. And there are a lot of teams that had their paycheck games last week that weren't happy with the way they played either. Yeah. Ohio State fans and Tennessee fans and Clemson fans and Arkansas fans. And unless you're Colorado or Washington or USC or Georgia or Texas, maybe Florida State, like there's a list of like 10 teams or fewer that are like, we are like the first 2 weeks have gone exactly the way we wanted to. And we have no complaints, right? Like everybody has had their growing pains through the first 2 weeks of the season. So you're not unique like that if you're TCU. The question is, how do you address the things that you've seen?
Right. And I mean, overall, I'm happy with the offense. I think they have a high ceiling. And I'll also say, like, play calling's difficult. And if you watch, like, the teams that you follow, if you watch all the plays, you're going to come away with 4 or 5 plays a game where you're just like, with the exception of maybe Lincoln Riley, because it seems like just wherever he goes, his team score 50 points and doesn't matter. He's also got some pretty good athletes. But, like, he's kind of the dude, and then everybody else, even really sharp play calling minds, are going to have some blunders. I just think my question is, and they can answer it over the next 10 weeks. There's still a lot of time. Like, what do you do well, and what are you trying to accomplish on a weekly basis? Because I don't have a great feel for that outside of we want to go really fast right now.
Well, and I'll say this in terms of, like, to your point, like, what's the identity? What do they do well? What have we seen thus far? I think Chandler has acquitted himself well after a rough start against Colorado. I think on the whole, his passing has been really solid. I think his timing and his accuracy has generally been pretty good. And I will say, this is something I saw someone make a comments about, and I was like, I don't know if that's real. And then I saw the touchdown to Jalen Robinson on Saturday. He really does do a good job with ball placement in terms of putting the ball away from the defender. Because Jalen Robinson went behind him, and you're like, why is he throwing behind him? Well, because he's about to get laid out by the defender coming over the middle, and he keeps the ball away from the defender. There are, like, little things like that as a quarterback, like, add up and are important. And I think he has shown some good things here. And he's shown some good things when he's been willing to tuck the ball and run, get you some key first downs, get you some touchdowns. It's great. So I think you have some stuff to work with there. I love Amani Bailey, and I love what we've seen from him when he gets decent blocking. And so I think you got some stuff to work with and be excited about. I think that verticality in the passing game and consistency from the offensive line. I think if you can get better in those two areas, you unlock a lot of things for this offense. And to your point, there's a lot of time to work on that. And, you know, you go on the road, you play a road game against Houston this week, you come home, and then you play SMU. If you can win those 2 games, which is not a given, those are 2 in-state rivals that are hard, that are tough teams. SMU gave Oklahoma all they could handle for about 3.5 quarters on Saturday. But if you can win both of those games, suddenly you look up, you're 3-1. And if you look at Colorado's record at that point, they will have played Colorado State and Oregon. They could be 3-1, they could be 4-0 at that point. And suddenly you feel a whole lot better about that one in the loss column. And you're still, like, you got like a month until you play Texas. Like, maybe that's the optimists viewing of the situation, that you're like, hey, hold on, like, maybe that first week, a 1-possession loss against a team that's a lot better than everyone thought, and as you're still figuring stuff out, maybe you feel better. Maybe.
When we come back, we'll close with a question. Can Shad Banks get more snaps anywhere other than kick returner? We'll talk about that next on Locked On Horned Frogs. We have a new sponsor, Jase Medical. This is a really interesting and cool product. If you need, like, a first aid kit, and this is not a first aid kit like a standard one where, you know, it's just Band-Aids and ace bandages, that type of thing. Jase Medical, which has the Jase case, they provide 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. You simply fill out an online form, and in some cases jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from physicians or any treatment-related questions through their call center. Don't get caught unprepared. You know, things can happen unexpectedly. You need to have these life-saving antibiotics on site. What if there's a storm? What if there's, you know, some short of shortage? What if you're out of town and you need something quickly? Save more than $360 by getting these life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. Again, that's jasemedical.com. Promo code is LOCKEDON for $20 off this code. Save more than $360 by getting life-saving antibiotics through Jase Medical, jasemedical.com. We thank them for being a sponsor of the Lockdown Network. So I joked about the special teams thing, but Shad is on kick return. And, you know, we've seen him do a backflip in the past after that interception against Baylor a few years back. We've talked about this defense, and seemingly their need for guys who can make plays in space. And Matt, you told me today, like you feel like it's time, right, that we enter the Shad Banks era fully as a starter at one of these positions.
Yeah, I don't know if it's subbing in for Jamoy Hodge or if it's subbing in for Johnny Hodges, but I think just the speed that Shad Banks brings without sacrificing any size, without sacrificing any physicality, to me it feels like a no-brainer. And again, Joe Gillespie played him a lot more. It's an FCS game. You get a lot of second and third string guys and young guys get a lot of playing time, but Shad got a lot of snaps with the first team on Saturday, and I don't think that's an accident. I think unless there's some injuries that we don't know about to one or both of Hodge and Hodges, I think that's a matter of like, hey, like let's get him some more live game reps and let's see what we have, and let's see if we can start implementing him more, especially in passing downs. And I think that's smart because, I mean, we talked about it against Colorado. Like, you know, when you're asking Jamoy and Johnny to cover Dylan Edwards in space, like that's a losing matchup. It just is. When you're asking them to cover tight ends in space, in the national championship game against Georgia, like that's a losing matchup, and it just is. And there's just not really anything that you can do about that. They have a role. They absolutely are can be important pieces for situational football on this team. But in terms of every down players or particularly passing down players, to your point, you need speed on the field. And Shad offers that. And he's at least a guy who has a lot of career snaps that you can let rest on. You know, if you're talking about, you know, putting a Jonathan Backs or you know, a Terrence Cooks or someone else out there who has not played as much football in their collegiate career, just hasn't, that's a different conversation. At least with Shad, then you can say like, hey, this is a guy who's experienced, who's been in this system for more than a year, and you feel a little bit better at. And at the same time, you bring some speed, you bring some athleticism. A guy who, and again, another guy that, you know, fits into my category of like is just kind of around the ball a lot.
Yeah,
and I like it. I like that.
Yeah, he makes plays. He shows up. I was really like, obviously I knew who Shad was before this, but I think last year I watched the Baylor game live, and, you know, kind of where I was sitting, there were a couple possessions around the 30-yard line where I was, and Shad was on the near side to me, and I was just struck at how fast he is. And it's not just the speed, it's the read and react, and the ability with his size too. Like he can take on bigger blockers, set the edge, keep that outside shoulder free, and keep contained. And like, not that Johnny and Jamoy can't do that, but they're just more traditional between the tackles types guys. So I feel like there's definitely a role for him. And it seems like they were transitioning a little bit more into some nickel and dime stuff on third downs last week. So hopefully that'll continue. But I love Shad. I mean, he's just been a joy since he made it, because he's always making plays or showing up somewhere or the other.
Well, and the other thing, I think the big question mark for the defense, or one of them, is the pass rush. And having Shad on the field gives you another potential blitzer with some speed. To your point, he can come off the edge, or you can bring it with the middle off, twists and stunts and stuff. So you can do some more. You can just do some more interesting things with him on the field. Yeah, that I was, and that was again part of the reason why I was encouraged by the defense, because it was Gillespie showing like, hey, I'm willing, based on the results from week one, let me tinker with some stuff. Let me figure some stuff out and see if we can try something different and see what we get. And that is something that I welcome and am excited about. And hopefully that attitude continues over the course of the season, and you find some more solutions that you like and make you feel better.
All right. Are the Frogs 2-1 when we talk on Monday, Matt?
I think so. I think it's your first road game of the season. We have we haven't seen this group of players play together on the road yet, because we have no sample size from last year either, because there's basically all new faces, at least on offense. Houston's results, I was very encouraged by their results in week 1 against UTSA, a team that I'm pretty high on. And then they come back in week 2 and just lay an egg against Rice. To their credit, they fought back from like a 4-touchdown deficit but then still end up losing in overtime. I am no, it wasn't overtime because it was late in the fourth quarter. Anyways, late loss.
Yeah, it was an overtime. You're
okay.
right.
Yeah. I was watching so many games on Saturday, then it all does run together. But so they end up losing in the end in overtime in a close game against a team that, like, by all accounts, you should have beaten fairly handily, at least in terms of talent and athleticism, right? So part of me is like, oh, does that make you feel like they're going to have a bounce back game this week and like be super locked in and motivated? Or did that game against Rice show you some things that you're like, oh, wait, hold on, we can definitely exploit those things as well? So I'll be curious to see how that pans out. I do think TCU outlasts them in the end. I'm not super confident in Houston's defense, which is surprising because I like Doug Belk as a DC. I was really high on him coming out of the 21 season, but they have really kind of fallen apart on that side of the ball. And I think after last week, you start hearing some rumblings about the warmth of Dana's seat. And as those things happen, does the focus of the locker room kind of drift? And can TCU take advantage of that? So I think that's all those things play in TCU's favor. And I do think they get the win. So tell me. So I'm excited to see how wrong I'll be when we talk again next week.
JT Daniels, USC to Georgia to West Virginia to Rice. I'm looking forward to seeing him at Howard Payne next year. I'm going to start closing all my shows with a D3 football joke. That's really the way to get subscribers. This has been Locked On Horned Frogs. He's Matt Jennings. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Jennings. I am at Simcox Steven. Shows at Locked On TCU. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and your favorite podcast service. It's your team every day.